And what the priest was just bringing out a while ago was so heavy. Because everybody talking about the queen. You understand? And when you watch something, you're going to realize that the queen and her descendants, they know their legacy. They know their history. They know where they came from. But as black people here in Trinidad, we don't understand where we came from. We don't have no history where we came from. We don't have no archaeology to understand where we really came from. But we in the I.S.U.P.K under commanding General YAHANNA, we're going to give you the truth. The truth according to the Bible. We're going to give you some history and some archaeology so that you will understand, so-called black man, that you are the true Jews. You are the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible. You are part of the 12 lost tribes of the nation of Israel.
I.S.U.P.K.
Anyway, my dogs go in on the street, them bad. Gun talking up with jeans member. If any somebody ever treat them bad, send the pussy them but meet them God. Louis V kicks pan we feed them bad. Catch a new drip dog we beat them bad. Look how we just come and we a beat them bad. You know sister we's them dad. Hey, but anyway though, this a no playground. The Glock 19, they have to stay round. Nah take no check with me payroll. Anything rise up.
Shalom Powder Spain. We are the I.S.U.P.K, started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under commanding General YAHANNA. And we've been teaching the truth according to the Bible that so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians are part of the 12 lost tribe of the nation of Israel. And what the priest was just bringing out a while ago was so heavy. Because everybody talking about the queen. You understand? And when you watch something, you're going to realize that the queen and her descendants, they know their legacy. They know their history. They know where they came from. But as black people here in Trinidad, we don't understand where we came from. We don't have no history where we came from. We don't have no archaeology to understand where we really came from. But we in the I.S.U.P.K under commanding General YAHANNA, we're going to give you the truth. The truth according to the Bible. We're going to give you some history and some archaeology so that you will understand, so-called black man, that you are the true Jews. You are the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible. You are part of the 12 lost tribes of the nation of Israel. And when you look at something, the queen who died just recently, her and her descendants had a very, very great role in doing something to you, so-called black man, that is recorded in this Bible. But the religious leaders will not bring this out to you. They don't want you to understand what these other races are doing to you, so-called black man. And when you understand what these races are doing, you're going to understand why you're in the bottom of society. You're going to understand why there's high crime rate in your communities. You're going to understand why black people is in this condition and we can't seem to find a way out of what is really happening to us. Let's go into the Bible and see what our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, and these prophets left for us to learn. When you have it, read Baba Kusha.
Khan, the book of Psalms, chapter 83 and verse 1.
And this is King David speaking here. Go ahead, read.
Keep not thou silent, O God.
King David is saying, keep not thou silence, O Lord. Go ahead.
Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God.
And he's saying, hold not thy peace, and don't be still, O Lord, because King David is seeing something that is happening. And he's pleading to the Lord, Lord, don't hold your peace. Go ahead, read.
For lo, thine enemies.
For what?
For lo, thine enemies.
And he's saying, for lo, meaning for look. Your enemies, not your friends. Your enemies is doing something, O Lord. Go ahead, read.
For lo, thine enemies make a tumult.
They do what?
Make a tumult.
Your enemies is making a gathering. Go ahead.
And they that hate thee.
No, they that love thee.
And they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
And King David is saying, they that hate you, O Lord, have lifted up the head. Go ahead.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people.
And he's saying, Lord, look, they are taking crafty counsel against your people. Not all people. He is saying, Lord, they are taking crafty counsel against my people, your people. Go ahead, read.
And consulted against thy hidden ones.
And he's saying they are consulting against the hidden ones. Who are the hidden ones? You, so-called black man, because your identity is not revealed in Trinidad for you to understand. Go ahead, read.
They have said, come and let us cut them off.
Let us do what?
Let us cut them off.
Go ahead.
From being a nation.
And these races have said, come and let us cut them off. You're going to understand something, that the queen and her descendants have done to you, so-called black man, you're going to understand something that the East Indians have done to you, so-called black man. You're going to understand something that the Chinese, the Syrians, and all these other races have done to you, so-called black man. That is why you are in the bottom of the society. Go ahead, read.
They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation.
Let us do what?
Cut them off from being a nation.
The queen and her descendants have said, come and let us cut off black people from being a nation, from being that thriving nation that they once were, from being that nation that ruled the planet Earth. Go ahead, read.
And the name of Israel.
And the name of what?
That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
That the name of Israel will be no more in remembrance. Your true identity, so-called black man, will be no more in remembrance. Now let me see who races had a hand to play in this. Go ahead, read.
For they have consulted together with one consent.
Go ahead.
They are confederate against thee.
They all came together in one agreement. Go ahead.
The tabernacles of Edom.
The who?
The tabernacles of Edom.
Now who is the tabernacles of Edom? Edom is the so-called white man, or the progenitor of the white race. The progenitor of the queen and her race. That is the so-called white man, Edom, in the Bible. Go ahead, read.
And the Ishmaelites.
And who?
And the Ishmaelites.
And the Arabs who bought the so-called slave ship, the ships to take you from in West Africa. Go ahead.
Of Moab. And the Hagarenes.
The Chinese and the so-called Africans. Go ahead.
Gebal and Ammon.
Who?
Gebal and Ammon.
Gebal and the so-called fake Jews who you see over in Israel now. These races come together to do something to you, so-called black man, to hide your identity, to hide your history, to hide your true nationality, so you will not know who you are. When you came from in West Africa, you was not no African. What happened before you came from West Africa? Well, let me go into a little history so that you will understand how you get to the shores of West Africa. Give me the book of Luke chapter 21 and verse 20, Baba Kusha. You're going to see what happened before these Atlantic slave ships took you up from in Africa and scattered you to the four corners of the earth. Go ahead, read.
The book of Luke chapter 20. The book of Luke chapter 21 and verse 20. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies.
And this is Christ giving the so-called black man a prophecy, giving the nation of Israel a prophecy. And he is saying, when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, surrounded by armies, go ahead.
Then know that the desolation thereof is nigh.
He is saying, then know that destruction is coming to your nation. Destruction is coming to your people. Because these other races, they came together to destroy you, so-called black man. Christ is letting you know, when you see these armies surround Jerusalem, do something. Listen what he tells you to do.
Verse 21. Then let them which are in Judah flee to the mountains.
And the Lord is saying, Christ is saying, then when you see these armies surround Jerusalem, let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. And you're going to understand, so-called black man, that these mountains was in West Africa. Christ is telling you something. Flee to the mountains when you see these armies surround your nation. And guess what? We as a people left Jerusalem and fled to Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution, fleeing from slavery, fleeing from the destruction that was happening to our people. This is what we have to understand, so-called black man. We was in Jerusalem before we went to Africa. Now when we reached to Africa, listen what happened here now. Give me read this article for me, Baba Kusha. The black Jews. Read it from the black Jews, Baba Kusha. This is what happened when we reached to the West Africa.
From the book Babylon to Timbuktu. The black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes.
So when we flee into Africa, we as a people had an advantage over the African tribes. Go ahead.
They carried their culture.
We did what?
Carried their culture.
We carried our culture,
History.
our history,
Laws.
laws,
And written records.
and all our written records of how we were as a people, of how our forefathers lived as a people, of how our nation thrived. Go ahead, read.
This assured them a constant precedent for the development of a higher social organization.
So we carrying our laws, our history, our culture, our nation would have been higher than the African nation. Go ahead, read.
Because of the stability of the black Jewish culture,
So because of our stability, go ahead,
the Jews were not absorbed into the autochthonous population.
we were not absorbed into the population of Africa because we were separate from them. We had our own culture, our own history, our own laws. Go ahead, read.
In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes.
So some of these native Africans started to intermingle in our culture. We started to absorb them. Go ahead.
The Jews made use of every opportunity
And we made use of every opportunity after we fled from Roman persecution. Go ahead.
They were an industrious and skillful people.
We was what?
An industrious and skillful people.
And we was an industrious and skillful people. Contrary to what the politicians say here in Trinidad, black people don't want to work. They don't want to look for a job. They're not educating themselves. This is our history. We was always a skillful and an industrious people.
Right.
Go ahead, read.
In the Jewish Ghanaian states were found kings,
So in these Ghanaian states, they were found Jewish kings. Go ahead.
princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historians, language interpreters, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths, leather workers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmiths, agriculturists, etc.
And this is the kind of skillful people we were when we fled into Africa. We didn't flee into Africa without clothes. We didn't flee into Africa without proper laws governing our people.
Right.
We was a skillful and industrious people. And you know what happened? We started to build in Africa. We're going to read our next article to show you why these Africans took us and sold us into slavery. You're going to see why they knew that we was a different people from them. Read it from the top.
Right. Professor David Elitz and Professor David Richardson, Atlas of the Transatlantic Slave Trade.
So this is an atlas of the transatlantic slave trade. Go ahead, read.
Both buyers, Europeans.
What?
Buyers, Europeans.
So the European buyers who bought slaves from in West Africa, go ahead.
And sellers.
And who?
And sellers.
And those that sold black people into slavery, go ahead.
African.
Who?
African.
Who?
African.
The Africans. So these historians knew who sold the so-called black man into slavery. Go ahead.
So the people traded into captivity.
They saw what?
The people traded into captivity.
They saw the people that was traded into captivity, that was sold to these other nations. Go ahead.
Into captivity on the African coast as outsiders.
So they saw that the people being sold on the African coast were outsiders. These filthy Africans knew exactly who they were selling into slavery. They knew that it was not their people. You so-called black man, Hispanic man, and Native Indian man, again, you are part of the 12 lost tribes of the nation of Israel. And your history is recorded in this Bible. You are part of the 12 lost tribe of Israel. You are the Hebrew Israelites that was taken from West Africa, sold into the transatlantic slave trade. You are the Hebrew Israelites that was brought up from Egypt by the hand of Moses, by the hand of our Lord.
Listen well to what I tell. No calling can cause pain. Something that a rebel knows very well. Can't you tell I was sent from the Lord?